Yeah.
It's very unfinished, and we are supposed to sort of have it open to early adopters by
We'd love
by
to see
October.
it.
Yeah.
Maybe we can meet up during a break.
Yeah, but well, I have a poster and a lightning talk this afternoon, so I think maybe them first. And
After you finish that, you
Right.
realize.
We'll be here Saturday and
yeah,
Sunday.
yeah. I'll send you the mail right now, so that you have
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
So you've got this sorted.
I think everything is set up. When Mark comes back, we can check to see.
Yeah, because there's a little,
There's a little
yeah,
thing
it's
there.
right now.
Let's put it in, just to make sure.
Right. We used it last time and it worked, so.
Okay.
Something just maybe.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, test.
We have handheld ones as well somewhere.
Okay,
in front of
good.
it. Oh, there's one here.
Okay, you're gonna,
I don't know, are we doing a panel or anything, or is it just here somewhere?
I think it's just straight speakers. Yes.
yeah.
And, yeah, I think it's the second, so the first one is in 1 hour, and the second one's 30 minutes.
Okay. I changed it back to that. I changed it back to that.
So yeah, we got an hour
Okay,
and
but
then half
Debbie
an hour.
needs to get into it. She knew what the
But
password
Noah
was.
is,
Because it's
this
always
one.
been,
Yeah, this one's 1 hour. Okay.
Yeah, beautiful, that's you.
No, no, you changed.
So what I'll do is I'll give you the sort of 5 minute warning times. Do you want me to save
Yeah,
some
don't
time
do
for
that.
audience
Yeah, so
questions?
I'm gonna.
Way that, I'm gonna pretty much
See
hand
if
it off
you
to.
can walk into it.
They're gonna
And
do
if you
a
can-
presentation for the first 30 minutes. One of
Because
us
they just
has
said-
the Q&A and
they just said-
brainstorming.
they
So
just
I
said-
think
you don't
it-
have to give them any
It should be
time.
pretty easy, like you can just say,
I don't know.
it's 2 o'clock.
All right, so you want me to do that, like I'll say.
So I'm sorry, it should be 3
Sorry,
o'clock.
three- Yeah, oh yeah, 3 o'clock is totally, yeah, I'll tell at the end for the question. Yeah, but I
Send us to the,
Perfect.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, no, my pleasure.
what's your Gmail address? Okay, it's coming. Yeah.
No, that's a different.
Yeah. Okay, I just, it's forwarded to you, so. You may have to call them. and see if it's on.
I didn't write the article that you saw. I
Okay,
write,
bye.
I write a weekly column on it. My last one was an interview with Steve. And typically it's, you know, I have written about art.
So I don't know. Oh, yeah, no worries.
Hey.
Hi. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Morgan.
You did a great job running.
Oh,
such a first time.
well, thank you.
So it's just the two of us and then Andrew's gonna introduce us.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. Thanks. Is the next speaker here is Thomas Cleninger here as well? Yep, because he's next afterwards. Sorry, maybe he'll come later. That's fine. But that's fine. I mean, if you might come after,
Okay.
so that's fine.
Hey, Melody, there are ether packs for every session already, is that right?
There's a template people can use to create.
Oh, okay. And where do we find that?
So it's on the program page,
Okay, so on the program page, I'll look for a template.
So on the program page, you can
No.
click a link to notate. And then there's a section on the speaker page.
Okay, let me make that real quick.
I just checked the Silver Valley full charge.
Oh, so you're gonna explain that?
I can see the link again.
I guess that's because I don't actually, like,
I don't
the
even
first
know.
session was all set up, I hear, I just wondered if you caught that right on the top, like, oh, that person. So, yeah, there's narrative talks about how to do it.
Hey.
Hey, good, how are you? I mean, just add it maybe to your session.
Yeah, I'll add to the session
Add it to the
description.
session description, and then I can just tell them. Perfect.
Yes,
Thank
okay,
you.
I'll do that.
Alright.
Yeah, introduce you to Mark. Hey, Mark. Yes, this is Effie Capsalis, the Smithsonian Institution Archives. So I want to make sure you tune that. He's actually going to be in DC in a few weeks.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
He's meeting with LC.
Weekend of the 8th.
Okay.
Actually, Friday is the Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting, you might meet some of your folks.
Yeah, I know you're doing. Yeah, We'll trade.
Yeah, we'll train.
Hello, 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 hello.
I'm happy to
Hello,
be
hello,
Yes.
hello. Hello, 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 hello. Sure. Maybe two. Hello? Oh. Booming.
Yeah. Of course, so this was partly to motivate, yeah. Yeah, Martin. Yeah. Good. You? I'm glad you said that. Yeah, absolutely.
There's also two, these are supposed to be sort of questions, whatever, but, does this work? Yeah, that works too. If you decide to use this, I'll just show you how to turn it on.
Excellent. Hey, Sandra.
Get to know people.
Come on in. You can sit there as long as you don't bump it. Yeah, that's good. Come on in.
I took my slide deck with you, so that comments, isn't it?
Oh. Yes. I will find the page in the test. But you upload the comments. I can look at your contributions and find it under your contributions. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Wiki Conference North America 2017. That's the only category we have.
Yeah, there's already presentations.
Good. Excellent. Thank you.
We have a lot of
live demo, but no video.
Okay.
Oh, actually, there is a video.
There is a video, so I did plug in the audio.
There is a
The audio?
video.
Test the
Yeah.
sound?
We do.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great.
You want to try this?
Yeah, we should try it probably.
Just for levels?
Because if we don't, it's guaranteed not to work.
The TV.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to get to.
We'll be good.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
It's not critical, the audio.
Oh, we got 2 minutes before we get started, but in case you have a device that you can run Etherpad on, the Etherpad will be really useful because one of the things we're going to do is after the presentation, we have a whole hour to talk about Internet Archive, is to get your ideas on other types of collaborations that the Wikimedia community can have with the Internet Archive. So if you can have that Etherpad open, you can even start jotting down ideas as you see the things that Mark and Wendy are talking about here. So if you go to the main program of Wikimania and you click on this session, which is Internet Archive and Wikimedia, you will see the program page for this proposal, and there's a big Etherpad link at the very top. So if you click on that, you'll get into Etherpad, and we encourage you to group note take, but also just to start jotting down ideas, because the last half of this presentation is actually asking you for feedback and ways to work better together across the community and Internet Archive. All right, so we'll wait 1 more minute for people to trickle in. We'll get started.
I just tweeted out the link to the Etherpad.
Oh, great, thank you. No, it's Internet Archive. You're looking for Asams, right? Yeah, so I don't know where Asams is. Someone else? All right, Internet Archive.
Thank you for being here instead of eating banana bread in the hallway. We really appreciate you coming.
There was one session that said if you attend, you get a free massage. I was thinking about moving their sign over there. Advertising.
Yeah, great.
Go ahead.
All right,
You don't
thanks.
need me.
Let's get started. Hi, my name is Andrew Lee. I am a longtime Wikipedia contributor, and I am really happy to have this, I think, first ever session of Internet Archive and at Wikimania. I don't think we've ever had it, which is amazing considering how much synergy there is between the Internet Archive and Wikimedia, the Wikimedia movement. How many people here have used the Internet Archive in some way that you remember at least? Great. How many people have actually visited the Internet Archive physically?
It's on my bucket list.
It
is.
You actually all
Invite you to
should.
lunch.
And I'm pretty sure you'd welcome them.
Oh,
Yeah, totally.
absolutely.
Anytime you're in San Francisco on a Friday, every Friday they have an open lunch. You go there for their free lunch. You meet amazing people. It's their only staff meeting they have, right? It's this open lunch for the public. And after the lunch is done, if Brewster Kale's there, which he mostly is, he'll give you a private tour of the Internet Archive, which is unbelievable. You get to see the machines humming, the hard drives blinking, serving up all this stuff. It's an amazing tour, and it's amazing how much distance there is between the Wikimedia movement and the Internet Archive, considering they're in the same city. So hopefully this is the beginning of a lot more collaboration between the two sides. So I first met Wendy and Mark when about 2 or 3 years ago, I was doing a lot more with Wikimedia and video, and I was at the Internet Archive for a meeting, and we just happened to be talking video projects, and I remember Wendy said, so who can we talk to about these dead links on Wikipedia? Because Internet Archive had been independently looking at what we've been doing in the Wikimedia universe and saying, you know what, you've got a lot of dead links and broken links, and since Internet Archive stores all the content from dead links, it was just kind of doing a public service, but there actually should be more connections there. So what they're going to talk about today are many more of these connections. I'm so happy that I was able to, in that meeting, just say, oh, you should talk to X, Y, and Z, connected them, and we have this really virtuous collaboration now. I'm not the key to anything, I just connected 2 little sockets together, and I think everything is happening in a great pace now. So they're going to talk about the kinds of things to fix dead links that they've been doing, some numbers that are pretty amazing, and maybe talk about ways that we can work together going forward, because I think this is just the start of many things that we can do. All right, so I want to introduce Wendy Hanamura and Mark Graham.
Everyone, thank you you so much for being here at Internet Archive Wikimedia. It's an hour when we're really asking you to brainstorm with us about how we can use all of the resources of both of our organizations to do greater good. My name's Wendy Hanamura. I am the Director of Partnerships.
And I'm Mark Graham. I'm the director of the Wayback Machine.
I wanted to show you, this is our headquarters, so if you come for lunch, this is where you're going to go. And our founder, Brewster Kahle, likes to say he had to buy this building because it matches our logo. And it's true, it does. But it really also harkens back to why Brewster founded the Internet Archive 20 years ago. He wanted to create the Library of Alexandria for the digital age, the second Library of Alexandria. And our mission has always been and will always be universal access to knowledge. We always joke, it's tattooed on our forearms and our foreheads because we get up thinking about it and we go to bed thinking about it. How can we live up to the great promises of the internet, which was that all of the great cultural references, all of the great works and knowledge could be at your fingertips if you were connected to the internet. So today, here's the game plan. We're going to talk for about a half an hour about what we're doing together with Wikipedia, what we'd like to be doing with you this year, and then kind of throw it open to some other stuff we could be doing. We'll take some questions for about 10 minutes, and then for about 20 minutes, we really want to, get into some brainstorming with you folks. But along the way, you could think of us as hoarders, if you will. We have been collecting a lot of the great cultural works of humankind. 90,000 software titles, 2 million moving images of video and film, 2.4 million audio recordings, including any Deadheads, any Grateful Dead fans? You might know we have 94% of every live recording ever made by the Grateful Dead. 3 billion hours of television from 25 different countries. 3 million ebooks, including 2.5 million of which are public domain, so free use for any Wikipedian. And I think the collection that we're best known for, 302 billion web pages in the Wayback Machine, which is what Mark has taken charge of over the last couple of years. So at heart, the Internet Archive is a digital library, a huge digital library for humankind. And I think where we come together with you is that librarians have always been stewards of knowledge. We have a special role. And you are the great educators who take that knowledge and bring it to learners all over the world. We also want you to think of us in this way. We see ourselves as infrastructure for the open knowledge world. So we do have a site and we do other things, but that's not where our real focus is. Our focus is getting all of these materials, the films, the books, the television, the web, and making it available to folks like you to use for research, for writing, for education. We're the infrastructure, and you are the people who bring that knowledge the final mile. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark, who is going to tell you about how some of this 30 petabytes of knowledge is being used with you on Wikipedia right now.
Excellent. Thank you, Wendy. So many of you, I'm sure, are aware of the Wayback Machine. It's been running for about 21 years, backing up the public web. And as noted, there's more than 300 billion web pages, nearly 600 billion URLs that we've archived. We archive more than a billion new web pages every single week. And we have a special focus on all things having to do with Wikipedia. We teamed up a few years ago after that introduction was made, and Andrew made the introduction, with Wikipedia, a volunteer at that time, CyberPower. I don't actually see CyberPower here, but CyberPower is here in the building. We're working with him. And he's been working on a bot, which is now called Internet Archive Bot, or IA Bot. And because we've been archiving for a couple of decades, everything that we can get our hands on, but then really focusing for the last few years on every single edit that's made and every external link that's referenced in all of the wikis, we have this rich repository of archives that we can use to go back and fix up dead links So part of our job, as Rooster likes to say, is to make the web more reliable. And so right now we've been primarily involved in remedial work, going back and fixing things that are broken. But we'll talk about some future plans that we have in a little bit here. This is the front page of the Wayback Machine. I just want to bring special attention to the bottom right, the same page now. Oftentimes people say, how do I archive a page? There are a lot of different ways of doing it, but this is probably the simplest. Bottom right, web.archive.com, just put in the URL.org. Just put in the URL there, and that will cause that page associated with that URL to be archived in real time. So I noted the bot, Internet Archive bot, and it's been running for more than a year on the English Wikipedia, and I spoke in San Diego last year, and at that time we had fixed up 1 million broken links. So what it does is it runs through the entire Wikipedia, all 5 million some odd articles, it looks at broken links, and then it goes to the Wayback Machine and says, hey, can you find a good archive? And if it can, then it edits the link and redirects people to an archived version of that broken link. So this is a very high performance bot, but it also has an error rate of like 1 or 2%. So that's not really good enough, right? So there's another bot that was developed by another Wikipedian, a volunteer, a man named Stephen Ballback, who unfortunately isn't here with us today, and he's back at home working on this. And this bot goes in and it checks everything that Internet Archive bot has worked on, and it really examines it very closely, and it tries to fix any errors that it finds. And in addition to checking the Wayback Machine, it references 21 additional web archives. And the error rate on this one is like a small fraction. So through the combination of these two bots working in tandem, we've been working now first on the English Wikipedia as noted, and then for the last few months on 5 other Wikipedias, and these are some of the numbers. So for Norwegian, species, English, Chinese, Dutch, and Swedish, we have corrected these numbers of links down there on the bottom, for a grand total of 2.7 million rescued links. And yeah, we're pretty happy about that. Because that's 2.7 million times like a big number n of times that people would like click on a link and get, page not found. And then what do you do? And if we add to that the links that go to the other 21 archives, the number is something like 3.2 million. This is a list of where IABot and Wayback Medic is running right now today. And this is a list of where we will soon be running. The sites in red we've been approved on, and the ones in black we're still waiting approval. As many of you know, far more than me, I'm not a Wikipedian yet. I'm kind of getting involved with the community. The approval process for bots can be like hundreds of pages long with lots of conversation, or it can be, does anyone object to this? No one says anything in 2 weeks, boom, you do it, and everything in between. So we're having some challenges right now with the German Wikipedia, and also the French Wikipedia. I don't know, go figure. But all kidding aside, we would love, this is an area where some help, some collaboration would be of mutual benefit. So I'm going to turn it back over to Wendy now, and she's going to talk about another of our initiatives.
Before I do, I just want to make sure we're clear. So Mark, you're telling us, right, that since 2013, Internet Archive has archived every single link in every single Wikipedia.
288 plus, yeah.
Right,
So,
and
yeah.
it's tens and tens of millions of links
Yeah.
that we have in the Wayback Machine, just
Mhm.
waiting. And then in 6 countries with 7 more pending, there's a bot that goes back, and every time it breaks, it automatically reverts back to that. And what we're asking you, we're pleading with you to do with us, is take that 13, the 6, and the 7, and make it 288.
Sorry, one question on what you just said. So you say that you automatically archive links already that will be put into Wikipedia?
So what we do is we listen to the change list on the IRF, every change that we see, and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 million a week.
And that on all Wikipedias? Or
On 288 of them at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, so not all 700 and some, but we're working toward that.
on the grand majority,
continuously in near real time.
to one organization that wants to solve one of the world's big problems. And my boss, Brewster, came to me and said, Wendy, I want us to apply. And I said, oh, come on, Brewster. You know, climate change, disease, there's no way. And he said, I know, we'll never win probably, but I want you to do it because I think it will help us really wrap our arms around one of our big goals. And so 1,904 people applied. They looked at, there were some crazy ones, right? So those got thrown out, and they judged 800 of the proposals. They had 416 judges, and then it became 8 semifinalists. And lo and behold, along with the Jimmy Carter Center and the Catholic Relief Services, the Internet Archive is now one of 8 semifinalists for this $100 million competition. And you guys really want us to win because you are heart and soul in the middle of our proposal. So we wanted to share this with you. I guess I can tell you about the problem we're trying to solve best by showing you this book. It's called Executive Order 9066. And all kidding aside, this book changed my life. I found it in the Glenview Public Library when I was in the 6th grade. And reading this book was the first time I really, truly understood that that camp that my parents and grandparents always talked about going to during World War II, it was really a prison camp, a place of incarceration, and that my family had spent 3.5 years behind barbed wire in the hinterlands of Utah. But here's the thing about this book. It was published in 1972. It's no longer in print. Very, very hard to find. And now I have a son, Kenny. He's a senior in college, and this would be a great book for Kenny. He just happened to take this class last semester on race and ancestry, and he could really have used 9066 in his studies. But like so many of his generation, and probably like all of us, Kenny does almost all of his research online. So for a generation of learners, perhaps a generation of Wikipedia editors, if a book is not digital, it's as if it doesn't exist. If a book is not digital, it's as if it doesn't exist. So for that book that changed my life, Kenny could have found a little snippet of it in Google Books. Turns out the only place he could actually flip through the pages is on our site, Open Library. Here's the thing. That book is one of millions and millions of books, life-changing books, important books from the 20th century that are right now beyond your reach, as editors, beyond the reach of digital learners everywhere. We have a chance to fill in that missing century of books. Libraries like us have been hindered. We haven't done such a great job. Take a look at this. This is a chart of all of the ebooks in the Internet Archive by decade of publication. You can see we're doing okay until 1923, which is the year that in this country, in the United States, public domain ends. And then we do okay again in the born digital era. But between there, 1923, there's a century of missing books that aren't online at all, that are missing from the digital shelves. And it's not just us, it's not just libraries who haven't been able to keep up with this digital demand. This is a graph of what's in the warehouse at Amazon. You see that same chasm of knowledge between 23 and the digital age. What sits in that chasm? The hard-to-find books, the out-of-print books, the important books that are beyond the reach of anyone. Where do they live? Well, they live in our libraries. So here's what we are proposing to MacArthur, to you, to everyone, that the Internet Archive will undertake to digitize 4 million important 20th century books. When you add the 4 million that we'll do to the 3 million we already have, we believe that will be the equivalent of a great online public library, a major library available for digital users. And that this time, we're going to be digitizing not just the books that are great for students and for professors and for Wikipedia editors. We have a chance to reshape the contours of this digital library so that the voices that are not being heard, the voices that are not in our libraries, can also be captured for a new generation. Here's our value proposition. If you're a library in this country, we will wave a magic wand over your collection. And if you have the physical book and we have the ebook, we will give you the ebook. And if you're so small that you can't create your own lending system, we will create a centralized lending system that helps you lend these out one-to-one. That's what we're trying to say. We're going to bring online a great digital library. We're going to empower libraries throughout the United States. And actually, we're also going to give all of these books to the 31 nations that have signed the Marrakesh Treaty so that they can be available to the blind and the viewing impaired. How are we going to reach people? Well, we're going to take these books to where people are. We're going to take them to the major search engines. We're going to take them into mobile. But of course, where we really want these books to be living as links, as examples, are in Wikipedia articles. That's how we can take all of this incredible online knowledge and reach the people who really need that. So what can we ask you to do? 4 million books is a lot of books. That is many, many collections. We need you to help us to select what would be the books that would be really useful to you as Wikipedians. What are the voices that are not being heard? I just went to a terrific presentation by the Whose Knowledge folks talking. Was anyone else in that? Right, so they're not able to create more accurate portrayals in Wikimedia articles because there aren't citable materials online. We can fix that. So we need you to help us figure out what should be in those 4 million books. And how are we going to do that? We're working with the Digital Library Federation, who is going to create a website and a very transparent process. We'll put up lists, people can comment, they can add their own lists. I do believe we can take a very large swath of what's needed and what's missing and fill that in. Here's another thing you can do. You could tweet to us 100 and change at Internet Archive, because I think the judges, there's only 11 judges, would like to know that it matters to Wikipedians all over the world that good knowledge, good open knowledge is available. So I guess the other thing I want to say is it's not just if we win the $100 million. Right now we have a 12.5% chance of winning, but we're going to do this anyway. We are doing this. Internet Archive digitizes about 1,000 books a day right now, and we're going to keep on going. So what I want you to imagine with me is what will happen 5 years from now when we have the equivalent of a great online library at your fingertips. What kind of impacts would Wikipedians see? I got a little glimpse of that this year when I went to the Whose Knowledge Wikipedia-thon for Dalit History Month at UC Berkeley. They brought some great new editors into the fold at Berkeley to try and enhance and make more accurate the Wikipedia articles that touched upon Dalit history. Here's poor Heather, who had to teach this newbie editor how to make her first Wikipedia edits. But I think the insight that I really came away with is Siko and Anasuya held this session at UC Berkeley because it was one of the few libraries that had enough books about Dalit history. But that's crazy, right? Because what if you wanted to have this edit-a-thon in India or in DC or in Michigan? You should be able to take these resources anywhere and use modern tools. You should be able to do full text search. And I have to say, there was a room full of editors, probably 80 of us. Not a single person cracked open these books because that's just not how you work anymore. We can change that. We could digitize every single one of those books and more to change the flow of work. And what would that mean for articles? Well, some of you have probably met Michael Conley-Miswish. He's here today, and he is a Wikipedia editor. He's a Kumie scholar. Michael was at this Wikipedia edit-a-thon at the San Diego Public Library. And he said one of the real problems was there were very, very few books about Native American history in that library. But he said if we had more diverse resources to cite, folks like him would be able to reflect the Native American experience more accurately in articles. I think Seiko said when she brought them together with Wikipedia, she thought the first thing they would want to write was an article on cosmology from the Kumeyaay perspective. But that wasn't what they wanted to do. Michael's first desire was to go into the article on the gold rush because it showed an Indian killing 49ers with a tomahawk, right? And it was titled Conflict with Native Americans. Now, he said to me, Indian, maybe once in every 100 times, an Indian did kill a 49er, but it was so much more the other way around. And that conflict with Native Americans should really be the impact on Native Americans. They made those changes. They cited books. If we had better resources at their fingertips, they could do more of that. It would be easier for them to reflect a more diverse perspective in Wikipedia articles. I think that's the change that we hope to help make possible.
Which article is it?
The gold rush. He wanted to do the gold rush because
It needs italics in the caption.
now I'm going to turn this back over to Mark. We told you what we have been doing with Wikipedia. I just went over what we'd like to be doing in the next year, and Mark is going to take you into some new territories of things we hope to do in the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Wendy. I just want to also point out that cyber power is in the room right there. So thank you very much, Bex. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of live demo right now, so bear with me here. So the first one is analyzing a page. Let's say you, on an article, a Wikipedia article, and you think to yourself, oh, I want to make sure that all the external links on this page are now backed up. What would you do? Well, you basically could go over here and go to this tool called Analyze a Page. And I'm going to enter in the page. I happen to know that there is an article titled The Moon.
You want to take the thought.
And I'm going to, thank you, and I'm going to click on the Add Archives to All Non-Dead References and analyze that. And what's happening right now is that every link on that article, Moon, is being backed up to the Wayback Machine. And then all of the links on the article Moon are being edited to include a archived URL and a live web URL. And this is going to run for a little while. It'll produce statistics. It'll also identify any dead links in real time and work to correct them if an archived version can be found.
Quick question. What date of archive page does it go back to? The most recent one there is, the date the article was written?
Excellent question. Right now, the most recent.
Actually, so when it's choosing an archive, it tries to pick a time that is closest to the initial access time of the URL to ensure that the content of the archive is the same as the content of the original URL at the time it was added.
Beautiful.
Excellent. Okay, so I got a few other examples here. We're going to cruise through them fairly quickly so we can have some more interactivity. So let's say that you're editing an article and you see a book, but there's no citation of that book title to go to you know the book is available on the Internet Archive and you want to add a citation to it. So I'm going to basically go to my sandbox page. I'm in the full screen editing mode. I'm going to highlight this book here, Aku Aku. For Heyerdahl. I'm going to click the Cite button, and in that form field down at the bottom, I'm going to enter the Internet Archive URL for that book. Boom, there it is. And that is not the Internet Archive article for that book. And bear with me, and I will grab it right here. And there we go. And there we go. And there it is. And I will now say generate. And it's right now generating the citation through a Zotero template, and there's a fully formed citation. and I'll insert it, and boom, there it is now added in right down there in the bottom, and I could actually go to the book. Didn't work right. But anyway, the link should take me right to the book on the Internet Archive. We'll go back to that a little bit later. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is a tool called Internet Archive Uploader. As you know, there's this thing called a wiki site where ebooks are being collected, and most of the books in a wiki site are being sourced. Wiki source, thank you. Thank you, Ryan, keeping me honest. Wiki source is being sourced primarily from books from the Internet Archive. But in 2016, we stopped producing the Deja Vu version of the books. So someone produced a nice little tool called IA Upload, and you can use this tool to enter in the ID of a digital book on the Internet Archive, or the file name in the Commons, get metadata, and it'll import that book into Wikisource. And then two more. Also, I want to note that the work in IA Bot was really accelerated by the community, because the number one item selected by the community for the community tech wish list last year was work on IA Bot, and that caused the Wikimedia Foundation to be able to put some effort into it and help support the work that was being done by Max and the work that we were doing. They didn't actually give us any money to do it, but it helped to support us in the infrastructure. And I note that in the 2016 wish list, here it is right here, there is an item called Automatic Links to Internet Archive. And this is a suggestion that was made by the Wikipedia Germany folks. And the idea is that to integrate the Wayback Machine in with the visual editor, such that when people make external links on a Wikipedia article, that link is automatically archived, and the link is edited, and I'm sure someone from Wikipedia Germany is going to help correct me.
So just to correct it,
Thank you.
we have an international community wish list, and that request was on that wish list in 2016. And right now we just done the third edition of the community wish list on German Wikipedia, and we had a similar request on that list, and that's
excellent.
why I want to talk to you. So, but it's like Wikimedia Germany, not Wikipedia.
Got it. Thank you for that distinction. Much appreciated. And then finally, Get Books. So this is kind of experimental. This is still R&D, but I'm hoping to release this in Q4 of this year. Basically, what it is it's a tool such that if you're on any Wikipedia page and you suspect that there may be some references to books, and you wonder, I wonder if those books are available via the Internet Archive, you can use this cool little extension up here that happens to be called Wayback Machine, and click on the little link that says Get Books. It analyzes the page, identifies books, does a real-time lookup to the Internet Archive, see if those books are available. If they are, turns them into links, and we can see here, there's a link right there, and this is going to work. It's going to take me now to the book on the Internet Archive, Huckleberry Finn. There we go. All right.
Thank you. Excellent. So those are things that we have in the pipeline. And now we want you to dream with us a little bit, because we have this resource. And it's always been a little bit of a question in our mind how people could use this resource. It's called the Television News Archive. So I want to challenge you. What could Wikipedians do with 3 million hours of television, especially television news? So take a look. We have now 1.4 million television shows. They're in certain collections like the Trump collection. There's one on Congress. These are news clips from 25 different countries. News clips. There's also this. It's an index that you can download of clips that have been fact-checked by our partners at PolitiFact, at factcheck.org, and the Washington Post fact checker. So, in an era of alternate facts, when you're not sure, you could go and see what Trump actually said, whether it's true. You can find out what top journalists have decided about that. one of the funny things, we've been collecting television since 2009, millions of hours, but what it turns out they really wanted in journalism were the television ads, not the shows themselves. So in 2016, we collected ads from the top 26 primary states, and then we turned it into data. We created an open source tool called the Duplatron. It's basically an audio fingerprinting tool so that journalists could go and see which ads had aired. They could take clips of something Trump said and something Clinton said and see which news agencies had done it. And they were able to turn television into data. Here's something that the New York Times did, where they wanted to see in a debate which bites from the debate Fox ran and which bites MSNBC ran. How did that play? Television is data. Here's our latest foray into the experimental. Once we have millions of hours of television, we have to make it searchable. And if you don't have closed captioning, as you don't in many other nations, we're doing some AI work with Google to do what we're calling the face-o-matic. So it will be able to identify every time Putin or Trump's face is appearing and help index things in that way. You could put in Macron, though, or you could put in Trudeau, and help to find the things that you're looking for. At its heart, though, this is what it is. This is our television archive. So it takes the closed caption, and every piece of television in the US has to be closed captioned now, and it uses that as a search tool. So I'm going to take you to the live site. Here we go. Oops. How do I get out of that? Okay, thank you. I'm going to let's put in Wikipedia. Let's see what we got. Okay, so now it's searching all of the closed captionings, and it's found at least 223 times that has been said. And then I'm going to play for you what ABC News said about Wikipedia. Now, all of this is embeddable.
On Wikipedia with 1,000 added daily. But there's a dark side to Wikipedia. Neutral articles and privacy for contributors is often just a mirage, according to 2 insiders. They say they've been left battle-scarred after troubling personal encounters with the world's most popular encyclopedia. We begin today with their story.
Okay, so the dark side of Wikipedia. You might want to quote that. At least it's good to know, right? So, I'm going to ask you to get us back. Those are some of the things that we've been working on. Television, books, web pages. And now we want to open it up to questions for you, and then also turn it over to you to talk about what we could do together. So first, though, questions.
So I work at a big library, and like many big libraries, we used to microfilm a lot of books and then get rid of the books. So a lot of the things we have exist only on microfilm. Do you have the equipment to convert that into useful material?
We do. In fact, we're considering buying one of the largest microfilm libraries on the planet of journal literature, because we think that in addition to books, it would be very helpful for you folks to have access to journal articles and preprints. So yes.
I was really surprised when you talked about the TV part. What's the copyright status on those works, and can we use them on Wikipedia?
So generally speaking, we're a library. Libraries are full of copyrighted material, and we lend our copyright material available to people, and we also make things available under fair use. So particularly you might note there were like snippets there. So we limit the availability to 2 minutes, and we embargo everything for 24 hours. If you want more than that, just like any other library, you can loan something from us. So if you contact us and say, I want the full Rachel Maddow show from 2 weeks ago, we'll send you a flash drive.
So that is stream only.
Yep.
I used to work in TV, and you're right. TV is the most rights, it's the rights business, really. But before we launched the TV News Archive, we went to talk to the heads of all the major news divisions and said, you know what, we're a library. And we're not asking you permission to do this, but we're going to do this. And we are. It has been 6 years without incident.
Hi, Dario. Hi, working, yes. Dario from Wikimedia Research. Fascinating talk. I think specifically the idea of digitizing the missing century of books is something really compelling. We've been lucky to work with Mark in the context of the WikiSite initiative, specifically a project to create a repository of sources in Wikidata to serve Wikimedia projects. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. And I'd love to find a way to make it work for these 4 million books. Sounds like it's such a perfect match for what we're trying to do. So yeah, let's talk more about it.
So here's what we could do. We would love to give you our metadata, right? And books metadata is great because it's so structured already. We would love to make it, just like you saw, for every public domain book so that you could go back to the book. But we want you to bone up on your copyright law too in this organization, because copyright law is evolving. And in this country, in the US, I should say, in the US, the Google versus Authors Guild case was adjudicated and Google won. And that meant that digitization at scale is now legal and that snippets for transformative use is legal. So that would mean that you couldn't necessarily link back to the whole book, but you could link back to a snippet of any book because that's a transformative use. And we'd love to provide you with those snippets.
We'll find our lawyers.
Going about with the continuation of this country comment, how much of the content that is being processed is non-American and non-English? And
in the books or in all?
Both the books and TV and so on.
Well, in the TV, it's primarily in the U.S.
Well, okay.
Let
me characterize that a little bit differently. We collect in the U.S. from 25 different countries. So we're taking the Chinese feed, the Arabic package, which is not exactly the same as what's shown in the Middle East, but it's very close. And we're expanding this year to start collection in different parts of the world for television. The books, we've never done an analysis of that, but I was looking recently at how many books in Spanish we have, for instance. We have something like 150,000 books in Spanish. We have, I looked up Native American books. We have books in 1,200 books of native languages. We just got 465,000 books from India in 50 different languages. So it's not systematic, but it's kind of different.
And in the case of the public web, my commitment and my charge is to get as much of the public web globally as possible. So I've actually been going out of my way to work with domain specialists in different regions of the world to identify sources of web content. Focus primarily on news, but also government, NGO, etc. So we use the standard top-level domain lists. We use, frankly, lists that are available through Wikipedias and a variety of other sources to identify content around the world in multiple languages. There was actually something that was referenced last week in a newspaper article, I think it was in the Washington Post, and it had a reference to a story that was on a Chinese website, and it was all available in Chinese, and it was available at the Wayback Machine, and you could use Google Chrome Translate, and you could read it in English. And it was because we do a really pretty good job of archiving Chinese news.
We work with 1,000 different libraries and curators to collect what we collect in the Wayback Machine. And at one time, we did the collection for most of the world. Then we made the tools open source and they started to collect on their own. But it means that we have very deep collections in the countries that we started with: Korea, Japan, China. Other questions?
I work with consortia of librarians in Arab countries, and the digitization is proceeded much more slowly the copyright concerns and political concerns are considerable. Sorry. And I wonder whether you all are open to working with these consortia. There's a preservation concern as well, where some librarians are worried that political conflict or government control might make material no longer available at some point in the future. Is there a contact person that they can reach out to talk about mass digitization and upload?
That would be me. And I'll show you my card. And I also have cards right here. Wendy@archive.org.
We're in conversation with people in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, in Israel, and other Arab countries on various aspects of archival work right now.
You may wonder how we pay for all of this. Well, for one thing, I put up banners just like yours. Wow.
Copy them.
We just copy you slavishly. And that brings in about $1 million a year, not like the millions upon millions of Wikipedia. But we actually have 2 earned income services. One is to digitize books for 10 cents a page, which is the lowest in the world, I think. And the other is we harvest and archive web pages for our partners for a certain cost. So that pays for about 2/3 of our run rate.
So one of the areas where Wikipedia has struggled with is, how would you say, non-traditional documentation. So I'm thinking, here we are in North America, I'm thinking of all the indigenous tribes that don't necessarily write down. Do you have some kind of, how would you call it, like original documentation facility, or are you? And there are other cultures, of course, in the world that have that. How do you address that?
I was just talking to Mike Misquish because he was saying so little of their history is written. It's an oral history, and the final problem is that those oral histories are not citable in the rubric of Wikipedia, but it's still important to get those down. So anything they have can be uploaded into the archive, and you can create a collection. We will save it. We guarantee you that we will do lifetime maintenance on that file. So that means when video is no longer MPEG-3, we're going to translate that to the next format. We've already translated our video 4 times in the history of our archive. So yes, I said, Mike, come up. You don't have to come, but if you need help, let's upload all of your videos. Let's do your audio. Let's create a Kumeie collection that maybe someday could be citable in your articles.
But on some Wikipedia pages, there are musical components. Do you also archive, and how do you search for them?
We have, as you saw, 2.4 million pieces of audio, much music. Right now we're trying to digitize every 78 ever made, because those are getting thrown out right and left, right? We're worried that the 78 era is going to be destroyed and go away. We have now digitized 35,000 78 sides. So yes, we have a lot of music, and we work with music brains to try and get better metadata. Music is hard. Music is often copywritten, but we do have it.
Coming back to the topic of copyright, you work under US jurisdiction, and so I think that most of the laws you are based on are US laws, but Wikipedia projects are often under the jurisdiction of several different countries. I'm primarily an author of German Wikipedia, and in Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, we do have nothing like fair use, for example, which limits what we could use from the Internet Archive, because a lot of things you have in the archive, which is a good idea from our point of view as well, are copyright violations from a German point of view.
This is very true.
Yeah. Do you have any, I don't know, any efforts to handle this, to address this? There are like library laws in the several countries, which of course are different from the ones in the US. Do you have something like a legal department handling international copyright?
Well, we're in Canada, and Canada has fair dealing. And we brought together 24 of the top copyright experts in the United States. And when they looked at fair dealing in Canada, they said it's even stronger in many respects than fair use. So I think that much of the practice that we do in the United States can be extended to Canada. There's a couple of other countries that have fair use-like provisions. The only other thing that we can do is work with publishers. So we are doing that. We have a new program to digitize the back catalogs of university presses who retain rights and are giving us permission to do that. Because their authors know they're not going to make any money on those books anymore. They just want them out and being used. So we're trying in different ways to address copyright with the rights holders.
Oh, sorry, here we go.
This might be kind of a weird question, but you know how on the digital books, there's like an automatically made ebook on most books that's just like the OCR version of the OCR version of the book, and like it's possible to upload a cleaned ebook version of it. Have you ever thought about like scraping Wikisource like the other way and getting the ebook version from that and like making it so there's a nice clean ebook?
Right, yeah, so basically I think you're asking so that on the Internet Archive, we have the book, we're pointing to the high quality EPUB version that's available on Wikisource.
Yeah, or even just taking it for yourself.
So the answer is yes, we are. We're in conversation with various people involved in Wikisource about tighter collaboration there. There are many crowdsourced projects around the world. There's one called Gutenberg, for example, the combination of Gutenberg and Git, and there's several others that have a framework to support side-by-side editing with volunteers that are working on books. And there are tens of thousands of books that people have gone in and produced super high quality EPUB and .movie formats, where things like the table of contents and the indexes and all the rest of them are nicely linked, and that's something that we're committed to, because at the end of the day, digitizing the book is one thing, but having it be of a high quality that people can actually make maximum use of, really that's what's most important. I just was thinking, Wendy, about maybe shifting a little bit, and I mean, questions are great. We're going to be here until Sunday night, and just want to reiterate that you're all invited to come have lunch with us every Friday at the Internet Archive in San Francisco. When you come to San Francisco, because many of you will come eventually in your lives, and we're going to be around for a long time. But we really we're here to listen and to get ideas. And there's already been some ideas that have come up in this meeting and yesterday. So one idea, for example, was maybe all of the metadata of all of the public domain, at least public domain books on the Internet Archive could be imported into Wikidata, for example. Another is many of you are you edit basically, and so you like to work to make things better. And so if you've ever been on the Internet Archive and you've seen some of our content, you might say, gosh, how can I help make the metadata associated with this content of higher quality? That's especially true in the 78s. We just started that project a few months ago, and quickly some people just started coming onto the site and then adding metadata to the 78s, or correcting metadata that we had. And it was really a great boon to that project in particular. So Wendy's passing out some yellow stickies, and if you could just jot down ideas that you have, things that we might be able to work together on, or things that you think it would be great. It would be great if the Internet Archive did X, right? So solve for X. In addition, as Andrew noted, there's an Etherpad associated with this session, actually all the sessions, and so maybe tonight, later on, if you have an idea, please feel free to share it there as well. And once again, we're going to be around through Sunday night, and you can always get to people at the Internet Archive at the single address info@archive.org, in addition to Wendy and I's individual email addresses, which we'll
I
put
think
up.
we have a few more minutes though, right?
Yeah,
So
we had a question here and a question here.
All right.
So.
We're hoping that we can answer the last few questions, but that you will take a few moments to write down something that might have sparked for you. How can we work together. Sadly, I'm not going to go that far. How can Wikipedians use the Internet Archive's media? We want to be infrastructure to make you more powerful, more resilient. So when you have those, please put those up there, and we'll answer a few more questions while you're thinking.
Okay, so I have a question about other digital artifacts that are not music or books or news or so on, like old software, old games, abandoned, unclear copyright owned by
Probably our
defunct
newest and most
entities.
exciting archive, I think, in addition to the 78s, is software. And there are tens of thousands of titles available now on old operating systems, Commodore, Atari, Amiga. We just launched, I think it was yesterday, the HyperCard collection. So in celebration of the 30th anniversary of HyperCard. And this isn't just taking the software and taking the image and putting it on our hard drive so you can download a file and do nothing with it, right? No, this is where we've worked with Mozilla and enhanced some emulation software that they developed so you can actually run this software primarily invested in a Chrome browser on your computer. So you can right now be running HyperCard on your laptop.
So the #1 most popular old software thing, does anyone know what it is?
Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail. Oregon Trail beats everything. Back there?
Yep, I got it. Who am I going to?
This
hand.
There we
go.
Yeah, when it comes to old software, Adobe just announced the end of the Flash lifecycle. And this was a huge thing for the web for about a decade.
Yeah.
Worked on that, so I'm a bit sad about that. But so this stuff, the pages, also the pages in your archive, are about to be gone in 2 years, 3 years time. Because
you mean
Flash
because
player,
of embedded Flash and the browsers won't support Flash for playback?
So there's no point in delivering Flash content anymore.
Yeah.
Are there any plans on doing emulation thing?
Yes,
for that?
that's exactly what we're looking at, and there's a consortium of folks in the San Francisco Bay Area that are working on this problem. But it's a very important point that as an archive, we have to be constantly looking at doing format shifts to move to the new kind of technical standards, file formats, encoding, etc., to be able to make the assets available to people on the machines that they're running at any given point in time. So yes, if anyone here, and this is a wonderful example, I think, of where people, maybe in this room, people that you know might be able to help contribute to that effort.
So I wonder about like archiving data sets, like I don't know, like
scientific data?
Yeah, like what the EPA had, and it might be disappearing, but it's like maybe it's behind it.
We have it all.
Okay.
We have climate change data. We have the NASA data. We have been doing that not just since the Trump era, but for as long as we've been around. And we're moving into scientific data sets. We held something called the Decentralized Web Summit last year, and it posited that the pieces exist now to do an entire stack that is decentralized. And so we're doing a demonstration project with the guys from DAT project, Max Ogden, where we will be one node for these huge scientific data sets. So yes, data too. I'm gonna ask Jessica, and then I'll come back.
I was just wondering if you could explain the technology behind the decentralized storage idea. It's a little confusing.
Explain the technology.
Well, I mean, how does it look in your head?
So certain data sets are so large, right, that no one repository can hold it all. And it's not a good practice for one repository to hold it all. So the DAT folks, now called CSS, have written really powerful decentralized technologies that allow shards of it to be held in a Tor-like fashion by many different people. So if you called up this data set from Harvard Astrological Physics Department, part of it might come from Harvard, part of it might come from us, part of it might come from Oxford. They've also built this thing that is like a Dropbox for scientists so that they can do automatic syncing of data sets. we believe that this is a really important future, especially as the web becomes more and more dominated by platforms.
There's only 1 minute left. I don't know if you just want to wrap up.
Well, is there anyone who didn't have a chance to ask a question?
Do you plan to improve the quality of the metadata? So, for example, I think that's one of the issues with the Internet Archive to commons upload tool for books is that the metadata are not much machine-readable. So, for example, there is no way to know that there is two authors, for example, because it's just a string. Do you plan to do any work on that to improve Internet Archive searchability?
There are engineers right now back in San Francisco working on improving our metadata. We're doing it by combining our metadata with other metadata, using OCLC references and a variety of other sources, including some from Wikipedia. So yeah, I mean, this is an ongoing effort. There are 160 people who work in the company. About 100 of them are scanning books. About 60 of them are based in our San Francisco office. 2/3 of them are engineers. And many of them are committed to working on improving the metadata and also improving the discovery of the assets that we have, using tools like what you use, like Elasticsearch, for example. So we also collaborate with Wikimedia Foundation and their team on some of these tools that we're using together.
So if we leave you with one thought, it's this. We came here today because we wanted to convey our message, that we want to support your movement with our media, with our work, with our ideas. So please help us to work more effectively together. We're here for that reason. Thank you.
So as the next person sets up, just want to make sure that you know there's an Etherpad. Please jot down your ideas now or throughout the day or throughout the weekend. They're here the whole weekend. We're already talking about maybe using Wikidata as that metadata cleanup.
Come have lunch with us.
If I lived in San Francisco. Thank you.
So will the next speaker please come up and set up? Then we'll start in just a few minutes. Thomas Pleninger.
And we got stuck in traffic on the way back. So I arrived a little late.
Right. Thank you.
I didn't do any work. I couldn't catch the train. He caught the Zappos.
You should back them up with the archive. Well, we have to work with them. Thank you. Yes, with Alex and Jay. Let's go. We're here for the next couple of days.
Oh yeah.
Also, I mean, I think it's the right time for that. There is a meeting happening just with you and
Somewhere down there.
I'm going to follow this.
I know. I'm like, it was either someone really saying you should stop now, or someone just let it go. I don't know. Oh, there it is. Okay.
That's what I mean. They're not.
Oh, here. Can I have your microphone? Uh-oh. Do you have a microphone on still?
Yeah, I gave it to.
Oh, beautiful.
I gave it to
Somewhere. I'm fine.
Yeah, okay.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Wonderful.
I don't think
But turn down the. Oh, it is making noise in here. But there is a buzz in here. That's true. Okay, is everyone here sitting down? We're going to get started so that we have enough time. So thank you all for coming again. I'd like to introduce Thomas Pleninger. Is that correct? All right, and he'll be talking about Constitutional Court meets Wikipedia. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thomas Pleninger. I'm from Austria. I'm a Wikipedian in residence at the Austrian Constitutional Court. And first of all, I'd like to apologize in advance for any grammar mistakes I'm going to certainly make during my presentation. This is my first presentation I give in English, so please apologize any mistakes I'll do during my presentation. Now, when talking about why Wikipedia and constitutional courts belong together, we have to look at what the Constitutional Court does. The Constitutional Court is a state organization which is there for the people to rule the larger cases in any state in the world. This also applies to Austria. GLAM institutions normally are galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. As you might notice, there are no courts mentioned there. So it's kind of a special thing to work as a Wikipedian in residence outside of these GLAM organizations in a court. Courts are providing public services and are kind of producing knowledge. They are producing public knowledge more in common law countries like the United States, like the United Kingdom. I think it also applies to Canada, if I'm right there. Normally, producing knowledge in a jurisdictional way of seeing it does not apply to courts in a Central European law system. Central European law system is very much out of scope of this case law system. It's not a case law system in Central European countries like Austria, but still they're producing knowledge. And while they're producing knowledge, they are of interest for us. Constitutional courts are special amongst the courts. Constitutional courts are transforming the rules that apply for a society, which means the rules that the lawmakers in the parliaments are setting up for a society can be transformed by constitutional courts, which makes them quite powerful inside a political system of each country. Therefore, there's also a historical interest in the court rulings of constitutional courts. Now, how can Wikipedia benefit from collaborating with the Constitutional Court? Well, first of all, the knowledge we're talking about, the knowledge I just mentioned, is already there. You just have to find it. You have to speak to the people that prepare the findings of the court. You have to eventually speak to the judges themselves. It's kind of hard to find where the knowledge in these courts is placed. It's not like going to the library, taking out books and finding the knowledge there. It's a bit harder to find the ones that have the knowledge inside such institutions. But the knowledge is there. The knowledge is to be found, and that's what the Wikipedia in Residence's part is in this whole project. Pictures. Pictures are part of every institution. Most institutions have some kind of pictures within their databases, within their heritage. Most courts provide high quality photographies of the judges, for example. So, as constitutional courts mostly are well-known personalities in countries, these photographies might be of interest for Wikipedia, for Wikimedia Commons, and for our articles. Libraries. Almost every large court has a very specific library. When it comes to jurisprudential topics, these court libraries might be just as good as the libraries at law schools, because the courts have to have a good library at their institution. So most courts, most larger courts, and especially constitutional courts, hold large libraries of very specific jurisprudential books. And this is where knowledge can be found by us, by the Wikipedians. Now, why should a court have a Wikipedian in residence? How can courts benefit from collaborating with Wikipedia? Well, courts normally do not defend their findings in public. They stand for themselves. This means they're not going out and they're not going to go out and say, oh, we thought it might be a good idea to rule like this and that, and we thought that it might not be a good idea to rule like the other way around. That's not how courts normally defend themselves. Courts publish their findings, and the findings stand for themselves. Well, public opinion and acceptance of these court rulings are nonetheless important. And therefore, the explanations of the reasons are quite helpful for courts. This does not mean that courts do have to defend their findings, but it can be helpful in public, in kind of a public opinion building. And Wikipedia would be a great source of information about court rulings. I know that, for example, for the US Supreme Court findings, most of them, not all, most of them, there are quite good Wikipedia articles already. What I think of is that most constitutional courts in the world would be grateful if we, as Wikipedians, would write articles about their findings, would explain these findings to the public, would explain why the constitutional courts ruled this way and not the other way. Now, what are the special difficulties when working at a court, or specifically at the constitutional court? First of all, and this applies almost to every GLAM institution, copyright. Copyright laws are very strict in most countries, and especially courts are very sensitive when it comes to copyright laws. Explaining free licenses to courts can sometimes be time-consuming because the courts look at it from a very specific perspective. You know, constitutional courts, for example, have to rule about copyright laws. So they do look at copyright laws from a different perspective. They don't just look at it from a consumer perspective, they don't look at it from a normal perspective, they look at it as a law that might occur to be a case at the Constitutional Court in some time. So copyright law is a very sensitive topic at constitutional courts or at courts in general. Privacy is another topic that is at any institution quite crucial. But especially in courts, privacy is a matter which is very difficult to handle because the parties involved in a lawsuit have personal rights. And these are often standing against the public usage of information, which means if I go to a court and search for a court ruling, I might not want my name to occur in a publication of the court. And I have a right that this is not going to happen. The obligation of discretion is another topic that links to privacy in a way. In most countries, and especially in Austria, or let's say in Middle European countries, the obligation of discretion is bound by law. It's not something that these courts came up with by their own. It's something that they're bound to by law. They're obliged to discretion and to keep specific information, not only personal data, but especially personal data under official discretion. And this makes it quite hard to specify which information can be used for Wikipedia, which information can be used for Wikidata, which information can be used for Wikicommons, information in sense of pictures, and which can't. And this is quite crucial at courts and other state-run institutions. Now, what do possible outcomes look like? I brought to you some examples from this very specific Wikipedia in Residence project. For example, this nicely smiling guy over here is the president of the Austrian Constitutional Court. And these portrait pictures of the present judges have been published under CC by SA by the photographer, as we contacted him and asked him to publish them under free license for Wikipedia. So that's one thing a Wikipedian in residence at the court, as in other institutions, can do. Reaching out to those holding pictures, holding knowledge, and asking them to free this knowledge, to make this openly accessible. Pictures. Biographies of former and present judges are often within the databases, within the libraries of these courts, and need to be found, need to be told in Wikipedia articles. What I just mentioned before is articles about famous findings of the courts. That's what the guys in English language Wikipedia already make with the US Supreme Court findings. I think they're really good examples about how articles about court findings could look like. And I'd really hope that we could do such articles for other court findings all around the world. Lists about judges, about findings, references for other Wikipedia articles. What I mean when talking about references is, of course, books, it's findings, it's finding numbers. It's just everything that you can find within the databases and the libraries of the courts. And last but not least, Wikidata, Wikisource. There are tons and tons of data and of free accessible material within the court, these I just mentioned, that could be transferred to Wikidata, Wikisite of the normal cultural faculties. Think outside the box. There is a lot of knowledge outside of galleries, libraries, archives, and museums to find. Keep the special difficulties in mind, especially those that occur due to the nature of institutions. When talking about courts, it's all about privacy and the obligation of discretion. In other institutions, in other organizations, this might be other difficulties. that are very specific and very much linked to the nature of these institutions. You get to identify these difficulties and you get to address these difficulties. And last but not least, clearly specifying the goals of a Wikipedia in Residence project before it starts is quite difficult. But it can pay off if you think about it beforehand, before going on site, before signing any contract, because afterwards it might look like you have not reached your goals, and others might ask you why you did not succeed. So setting up, specifying goals beforehand is very important for a Wikipedia in Residence project, especially when going outside the classical GLAM organizations. So much from my side. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'd open the discussion for any questions occurred during my presentation. Yes.
Thank you for your job, and I think it's important also. I am a jurist also. I did a master and I did a lot of research in the case law reporting. Could you explain us how, in your case, you approached this organization and how did they accept to work with you, and if there is someone already that were interested in the open access and how it happened?
Thank you for the question. That's kind of a good question. How you get in touch with a constitutional court? In my case, it was really kind of random, because the librarian of the Constitutional Court of Austria got in touch with me because he saw that I already wrote the articles about some of the present judges, and he wanted to know who this person is that writes the Wikipedia articles about his judges, and he invited me to talk with him about the topics relating to the Constitutional Court. And when we had this talk, he said that he heard of the concept of a Wikipedian in residence. He heard of some guys in the United States doing such a thing, and he asked me if I would be willing to work as a Wikipedian in residence for them. So this was really kind of surprising for me too. So it's not a planned thing in this case. When it comes to acceptance within the organization, that was quite a hard thing. Especially explaining to court staff what I'm doing, and especially explaining to judges what I'm doing at the court was really hard, was really intensive, because most of them didn't know quite much about Wikipedia. They didn't know that Wikipedia is written by, all of us, and they especially didn't know that there is such a thing as normal person writing Wikipedia articles. So that was quite hard to achieve an understanding within the institution for my role as a Wikipedian in residence at the court.
This one back.
Thanks a lot, first of all, for your presentation and for your work so far. I have a question concerning, I think you might have touched upon this, but I have a question pertaining strictly to confidential information. Have you, in your work, have you come across any confidential information, and if so, were you instructed in any way by either the court or the judges or the admin there or whoever as to how to deal with such sensitive information, especially considering that the product of your work, meaning the articles and photos, they are publicly available. So how do you balance out those two aspects?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. That's really a difficult task for any Wikipedian, and especially for Wikipedians in residence at courts. And yes, there occur to be sensitive information, even secret information, and you have to sign a declaration of about sensitive information, about usage of sensitive information when starting at a court, as any staff member there has to sign. And dealing with it was quite hard, because as you said, the product that stands in the end for us as Wikipedians should be public domain, should be openly accessible. And sensitive information, secret information is the direct opposite to that. So when coming across sensitive information, it's all of these papers written in red where you see strictly confidential or something like that, you have to be very, very sensitive about it. You have to really think about it twice and maybe a third time how to handle it. And in my case, I normally rejected looking at these kinds of papers because I really knew information that came to my mind was stored in my mind, and I really didn't know if I could in 1 year or 2 years, if I could remember which of the information were confidential and which of the information were freely accessible. So I most of the time rejected looking at these kind of information. And if I did so, I tried to, well, clearly remind myself that these kind of information are not meant to be made public in any way. So that's kind of really a tough thing.
As far as I understand, under Austrian law, copyright law, those decisions are in public domain, am I right?
Those? Sorry?
The decisions of...
Yes, the court
Sure.
rulings are under public domain.
Okay, so how do you see this happening, this idea of having Wikipedian residents such as you in other countries different than Austria, where that is not necessarily the rule, which is basically an important part of the world? That's one question. And my second question is, what's your follow-up after you're finishing this first stage of what you're describing in terms of photography and biographies and stuff? What are you thinking about in terms of follow-up there?
Thank you very much. Yes, of course. Speaking about different laws and different perspectives in other countries, of course, copyright laws in different countries do not allow us to publicly reference to court rulings. Even in Austria, not all rulings are publicly accessible. Even in Austria, the rulings of lower courts, like district courts, are not publicly accessible and are not in the public domain. So this is kind of a difficulty when it comes to publishing court rulings. But what I meant by writing articles about rulings is not publishing them in text, not transferring them to Wikisource, but more writing about them, writing about the context, writing about the history of rulings. And I think this could be done in cooperation, of course, with literature from jurisdictional faculties in the specific countries. This could be done in other countries too, I think. I hope so, at least, because that's not a copyright issue, it's more an issue if there's literature about these rulings. Thinking about following up tasks, after completing all of this, it will last for years now, because the rulings are tons and tons of them, and we'll have to see which of them we can describe and how we can describe them. But thinking about what comes next, I think that we should cooperate with the court in terms of quality of our other articles. What I was thinking of originally when coming to the court was kind of asking them to read our Wikipedia articles about jurisprudential topics and asking them to tell us their opinion about these articles, giving us kind of a feedback from experts on these topics. So that's kind of what I could imagine as a project in the future with the Constitutional Court, if their staff is willing to do so, to give them specific Wikipedia articles, asking them for their feedback, and maybe work closely with them to to improve these articles.
Well, we're just out of time. Did you want to wrap up, or you're good? I think we're good. Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful, and thank you all for coming. There's a break now for half an hour, so until 4 o'clock. I'm hoping there's going to be coffee and stuff outside. Crossing fingers. But so yeah, the next session starts at 4.
Anti-Wikipedia, the sense of searchable and it's like an abstract and searchable, like I don't know. But it was great. That's great. Now, yeah, you're on a certain kind of wall, so you can't. Google can't find it. But if you go there and say, okay, I want to look at case number X, Y, Z, or whatever, and then you can find it and see it.
But you can. So,
not
if
always.
you want to look up a case, then what? And you can see the whole.
So, don't go beyond that. Certainly not illegal. They were talking about this, though, that some people were actually so, and this is where it's a problem. I mean, if you have victims or someone did something horrible,
Yes,
and
exactly.
they don't want to be followed.
Yes, that's exactly the point.
Yeah, exactly.
Because not only talking about civil rights cases, but also, as you said, criminal cases. That's good.
Also, like a local newspaper, like a municipal one, they have a so it has the names. But on the online version, they don't do that. So you can't search it. If you have a newspaper, you can see it. But if you're being stalked, someone can't completely find your name where you are. So I mean, well, this is it though. That's how they get around. So now it's a problem that you're getting some people who are downloading off the website so you can't search them and getting them all, putting them on the searchable site, and then telling people and saying, pay me $500, I'm going to put them off. And you know that being crawled, they're getting more and more permanent. So, you know, I mean, it's just so it's just going to take just last week. So it's like,
yeah, that's really interesting because it's kind of a privacy issue.
Exactly. But it is legally a public document.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is not what it was intended when it was made, decided to make public.
And I know that it looks that in the United States, there is a lot of understanding of privacy when it comes to news because, you know, even after the news, you have the full names of everyone. That's not what's happening in the European country, European understanding of news.